So you want to know the ins and outs of managing your money. Well, lucky for you, you're just in time for another episode of Master Your Finances with certified financial planner professional Kurt Baker. Kurt and his panel of experts are here for you and will cover topics from a legal and personal standpoint. They'll discuss tax efficiency, liability, owning, managing, and saving your money, and more. Master Your Finances is underwritten in part by Certified Wealth Management and Investment and Rider University. Rider offers continuing studies programs for adults who need flexibility. Want to add new skills to your resume? Take a continuing studies course at Rider University. Now, let's learn how we can better change our habits with Kurt Baker.
Good morning and welcome back to another edition of Master Your Finances, presented by Certified Wealth Management and Investment. I am Kurt Baker, a certified financial planner professional located in Princeton, New Jersey. It can be reached through our website, which is www.cwmi.us. Or you can call directly at 609-716-4700. This week, very pleased to have with us Angela Vendetti, who spent 12 years as a restaurateur in Philadelphia, opening a total of 5 locations, offer coffee house and catering business, mugshots. She also sold the business at the end of 2015 and now helps aspiring restaurant owners with startups, including SBA financing, profitability, and quality of life. Angie teaches a restaurant best practices course with the Community College of Philadelphia and has just launched her very own virtual class called Restaurant Startup 101. Angie, thanks very much for joining us today. I appreciate it very much. As I think many of us know, the last year, 18 months has been kind of rough in your sector. So I'd love to hear a little bit of, kind of what happened then and get into kind of how the restaurant business goes. Because I know one of the things that at least from my perspective, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that there was a rough year last year, but I think most of us still like to go out to restaurants. So when we have these changes, there may actually be some opportunities here, right? So I kind of look at things, yes, there's some challenges, but also if you look at it kind of from a slightly different way, there might also be some opportunities out there, right? So what are kind of your thoughts, I guess, about the history of what we learned during this last, 18, 24-month period, if you don't mind?
Sure. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on, Kurt. Happy to be here. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, COVID, I think, threw everybody for the loop, but I think the restaurants in particular have really had to reinvent themselves. And I think, even though despite those challenges, there are still so many folks that have always wanted to open a restaurant. And during this time, so many people have pivoted. So 25% of the workforce left the restaurant industry. That's something that we're seeing now. We're seeing everybody kind of struggling with staffing and keeping the regular hours. So you've kind of seen people scale back on their hours, which for a lot of folks has been a silver lining, right? Because they've actually been able to operate more profitably by being forced to really take a critical look at their businesses and make these cutbacks. So that's, one side. I think a lot of the folks that have decided, to retire, to get out of the business, were, at least the people I know, were close to retirement anyway. They kind of saw it as the out. It was kind of, let's leave on a high note here, and let's throw in the towel. Let's see if we could sell the business. So I've seen a lot of movement in the industry overall. But still no shortage of people who really want to own a restaurant. So people who, decided, obviously we all go into work for ourselves because we don't want to work for somebody else. We ideally want to make more money. And, we think we're smart enough to do it, right? I mean, at least that's what I thought when I decided to go into business for myself.
Let me ask you a quick question, if you don't mind. I mean, kind of on that, I know restaurant business tends to be pretty tough. And I was kind of curious, and I was actually a little bit surprised that you still have a lot of people, the way you said that want to go into the restaurant business. That sounds very counterintuitive to me, given all the struggles that we've seen that whole industry go through and the labor shortages and all the negative aspects that have been publicized. You're telling me there's still a whole bunch of people that really want to get started here right now?
You know,
That's what
it's
that.
true.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I'm busy. I
Right.
have quite a few new clients that are in the startup phase, so they're, doing the feasibility. I got to give them credit that they're actually, working with me on doing the market research to figure out where the best place is to put their concept and really trying to understand what the full cost is to get into the business, and if they're in the best position to do it. I always ask my clients, number one, what their personal income goal is so that we can be realistic about that. But also, what their idea of quality of life is, right? And being prepared to really delegate and put systems in place so that you can maintain quality of life. I think a lot of people right now are pivoting to opening a restaurant, like I said, because they're tired of working for someone else, or they romanticize the restaurant owning a little bit. And I am here to tell you that it is not easy. Even when employees would come in and apply for a job, and I'd say, "Why do you want to work here?" And they're like, "Oh, it's just a really chill environment." And I'm like, "Well, I'm glad it seems that way on that side of the counter, but it certainly is not back here. Are you ready to clean the bathroom? Are you ready to carry, 20 cases of, whatever it is up the stairs?"
Yeah, that reminds me of
So
the duck going across the pond, right? Everything looks nice and smooth on the surface, but there's a heck of a lot going on underneath, right?
Right, right. And you know what? That's what the restaurant business is. It is a lot of smoke and mirrors. It's all about creating the ambiance and creating this
Right.
atmosphere where people want to come and hang out and enjoy themselves. And, being an owner of that business, it's really not the same experience on the side of being the owner. So I really try to get real with my clients. Like, why do you want to do this? What are your expectations for how many hours you're going to put in?
Mhm.
What are your expectations in terms of your management structure? How much are you prepared to delegate, right? And if they're really not being realistic about the people that they need, and this business really does rely on people, if they're not being realistic about the people that they need to have in place, I really have to break it to them. Like, you are going to need to rely on people. You're going to need a team of people. And by the way, right now it's really hard to get people to work, like, full stop, right? Like, it's hard. I think everybody's having a hard time hiring. Um, I don't care what the minimum wage is, right? Like, you can't hire somebody for under 15 bucks an hour right now. And what else do you have to offer, right? So I think that COVID was a tipping point for the restaurant industry to really start to recognize these jobs as a career. Stop treating people like they're a dime a dozen, right? And what are you going to offer? Benefits, 401k match, paid time off, sick time off. Of course, Philadelphia has a sick leave policy, but outside of Philadelphia, not so much. um, but why do people want to come work for you? Why won't they just go work for Amazon? Or why not, if you're not going to provide any of those things, they'll just, drive an Uber, right? And not put up with you, right? So it's
Right.
like, what do you have to offer? I have a client that's got a kiosk in the Comcast Center, and he's only open Monday through Friday during the day. I'm like, that is the biggest perk out there for a restaurant job, right? Monday through Friday during the day, like, anybody that's trying to get out of, the evenings, but that's their skill, is hospitality or cooking or whatever, that's a great perk for him. So that's what I'm telling him to advertise in his want ads.
So have you noticed any? I mean, have you noticed people doing more due diligence ahead of time? I know when things go going really well, people think, "Hey, you can just open up your doors and you're going to have plenty of business. Don't worry about that," which is actually not a good idea because you have to plan for the downturns, right? A lot of people are like, "Oh, this is easy. I'm just going to open up the doors and make money."
Right.
Do you think they're focused on this, understanding that the restaurant business has seen something we've never seen before, where they literally shut it down? I mean, are you ready to hold on to a lease for a few months if, for God forbid, we have this happen again next year or 2 years or 5 years from now, where
Mhm.
they do another shutdown? Hopefully, it doesn't happen to the degree that it happened this time. But are some of these other components coming into the planning that most people never would have dreamed of? Who would have ever thought that we're going to shut down all the restaurants? I mean,
Right.
I wouldn't have thought of
Totally.
that 2 or 3 years ago. I
Totally.
go, I wouldn't. I mean, come on, that would be open at some level. I mean, not shut completely, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I mean, at this point, when I have my clients looking at space, I don't, I tell them not to even look if there's no outdoor seating opportunity.
okay,
So if they're, if it's small, if it's a tight space and there's really no sidewalk or any place outside or courtyard or anything like that for outdoor seating, I tell them to keep looking. Um, and for a while there, I was also telling them to build in COVID restrictions. So as long as there is a restriction on seating, there is,
okay.
a concession on rent. So that's definitely something that we've been negotiating for sure, for
Yeah,
sure.
you got to my next question. I was going to ask, are you talking to landlords about, hey, if this happens, are you going to make adjustments? Because I think some of them did it anyway because they felt it's kind of like we're all stuck in this together. Is
Yeah.
from what I'm understanding, landlords were being a lot more lenient with people when this was going on because it wasn't like the restaurant was like, I just decided to stop making money this month,
Right.
and so I think it's good that you're putting it in the documentation, some of these requirements, so that you can make sure that if you do have these adjustments, that the landlord is going to help assist with that difficult process. It's not going to be good for anybody, right? So that sounds like something we learned, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The landlords really seem to play ball, to be flexible. I mean, as far as I know, like a lot of businesses had access to relief funding.
Mhm.
Like I don't think that was limited to landlords. So,
Right.
I think that was really key in helping folks get through that period for sure.
Right, I agree with that 100%. But now we don't. That's not a given, right? If it happens again,
Right.
you at least have to have a plan on your side. And if the government comes in and helps us, great. But yeah,
Right.
you can't
Right.
rely on that. That's always kind of a big question mark. You never know what they're going to do or not do,
Right.
based
And
on
then,
who's doing what.
there's a lot of things that people did as a pivot to supplement their income, to diversify their income during COVID. And those things aren't going away, right? So
Right,
these are the other silver linings that I like to point
right.
out,
And I definitely want to get into that. We're going to take a quick break, though. You're listening to Master Your Finances. We'll be right back.
This is Master Your Finances with Kurt Baker, certified financial planner professional. Learn about tax efficiency, liability, owning, managing, and saving your money, and more from Kurt and his experienced panel of guests. Master Your Finances is underwritten in part by Certified Wealth Management and Investment and Rider University. Rider University offers flexible education for adult learners. For more information, it's rider.edu/nextstep.
Welcome back. You're listening to Master Your Finances. I'm Kurt Baker here with Angie Vendetti, and we've been talking about the restaurant business, which you're an expert in. And of course, COVID has taught us a little bit about how to pivot, and the restaurant business has been probably kind of the leader in pivoting for sure, at least one of the leaders. And you talked a little bit about before the break some of the adjustments and changes. I mean, I just remember one person I interviewed a while back, and he really saw no change because he was really takeout. Everything he did was delivery to colleges. So he was like,
Lucky
it didn't
him.
affect me at all because we just kept delivering, right? But your big sit down restaurants, they were like, deliver. What do you mean deliver? We don't really deliver. So here and there, but
Right.
really. So anyway, what was some of the lessons you learned? I mean, you talked about outdoor seating when somebody gets a lease. So you
Hmm.
have to be able to make adjustments, talking to the landlord about it. If something were to happen where there's an interruption, are you going to
Right.
help me out
Right.
too? And those
You
types of.
know, yeah, a quick story about a client that I had that just opened 5 weeks before the COVID shutdown. They were right on Frankfurt Avenue, and they were in an old ice cream equipment manufacturing plant, and it was this big brick building, and it really didn't have much curb appeal.
Mhm.
And when everything shut down, they turned this vacant lot next to them that was like filled 8 feet high with trash into the most beautiful outdoor seating space that then gave them the curb appeal for the main restaurant. I really thought, I was like, I mean, they grumbled, obviously they had to invest more money, and luckily they weren't out of money, right? But they made this into the most beautiful space. And now you really see it when you drive by. So I think that was like a silver lining for them. I think online ordering, right? If
Mm.
you're a restaurant out there and you don't have online ordering set up yet, you need to do that. See if your POS system has an online ordering component that you can build into it. If not, maybe it's time to shop for a new POS system, right? But the online ordering, people are either going to not be fully comfortable coming out to eat all the time, right? And so they're going to opt for the online ordering. But I think more than that, people have just become accustomed to ordering online, picking stuff up, and eating it at home more so than they used to be. So that's definitely a shift that's happened in the industry, and it's not going back, right? So you need to get that technology set up. The other, I think, silver lining is reservations, right? You didn't used to really see limits on reservations, and now that's commonplace, right? So you go and you make a reservation through OpenTable or Resi, and the restaurant will tell you that for a table of 2, you've got 90 minutes. And they make no qualms about it. And everybody understands, right? Are they going to continue to understand? I'm not sure. I think, we're kind of waiting to see how that plays out. But
are you saying that if I go there, I don't mean to interrupt you, but if I go there, I have 90 minutes and I got to get out of there?
That's the expectation.
Oh, okay. Because I don't remember. Yeah. Oh, so what? I mean, that's interesting to me because I don't know if I spend more than 90 minutes usually. I mean, unless I'm hanging out with business people, they tend to sit there forever sometimes, right? But right. I mean, what would be I'm curious, what would be the protocol if they were saying, hey, you're supposed to be here 90 minutes and all of a sudden it's 2 hours and they need to get another person in? I mean, this is new to me. I mean, I'd be kind of caught off guard if somebody stepped up and said, hey, you have to leave.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it was because they didn't have the capacity that they did. So they're dealing with 50% seating capacity for a long time they were. And so how do you deal with that? You got to plan it better, right? And people are like, okay, I get it. Now for a table of 4, you might get 2 hours, right? So I felt like it was a reasonable amount of time, right? And I'll tell you who does it really well is Front Street Cafe in Fishtown. They tell you ahead of time. They tell you when you get there. Okay. They also tell you that they're adding 20% gratuity to the bill. They tell you right when you're sitting down. So it's not a surprise add-on, right? That's when people get pissed off, is when you add it and you don't tell them about it. Right? They're very clear and upfront about it. And that's how they've been able to keep their staff, right? They're guaranteed the pay. And they've been able to manage the reduced capacity. And guess what? Like, they don't really have reduced capacity anymore, but those are still in place. So silver lining for them for now. I'm not sure how long people will tolerate it, right? Remains to be seen. The other thing I've seen is prefix menus. So there's a restaurant I'm in Lambertville, New Jersey, and there's a restaurant here, Hamilton's Grill Room, and they switched to a prefix menu. And it's brilliant. They're packed you can't get a reservation. It worked for them. That was a total silver lining for them. That now they're booked and they know exactly how much everybody's going to spend. Every
you mean when you say prefix, you mean like it's exact, like when you go to, I guess, Elements is what I can think of. It's like, well, this is what we're making today, and everybody's going to have the same thing.
It's you can choose like for 3 different parts of the menu. You can choose, from those, but it's $60.
Right. So it's very, these are the items for the day. And it's not like, I think of the Cheesecake Factory. We have to get like an Encyclopedia Britannica you're going through, right?
I still don't understand how they do that. I'd like to tour a Cheesecake Factory one day, as a matter of fact.
I feel there's a lot of hair pulling out in the back room. So.
Yeah.
But so this is like one of these, and you see that at higher end restaurants, which is interesting, right? I mean, if they're doing everything, for the fresh and organic and to the day, and like what's in season and all this stuff, and they're literally saying, hey, this is what we're going to make today. We hope you like it. Please join us. And here's a couple of choices. That's kind of cool to me from a consumer standpoint, as long as they have enough variety where you can, whether it's meat or fish or vegetables or whatever your basic preferences are. I kind of like that. It actually feels like you're at a higher end restaurant a little bit.
And for their concept, it totally works. It's not going to work for everybody,
right?
But for their concept, it totally works, and it helped them keep on top of all of the price increases on products.
Now, that must lower their cost too, right? Because I'm making a whole bunch of these, dozen items. Doesn't that keep my costs down too for the day?
Absolutely. You've got your economies of scale there, both in the purchasing of the product and in the production of the product. And my guess is if we looked at their menu right now, beef might not be on there because beef
Okay.
prices are through the roof.
Ah, there you go.
So
So,
there you go. And then the other thing that we saw come out of COVID that is really interesting is ghost kitchens. So the folks who, where their concept was just, maybe it was fine dining and nobody was really going to be ordering for pickup, right? It just didn't quite work.
mhm.
The concept for the takeout. They were able to sort of just pivot, test out different concepts from the same kitchen with the same staff, but create a virtual brand, right? So they just, created a brand that nobody's ever walked into the place before, but there it is online. You can order it online. You can get it delivered through Grubhub or Uber Eats or whatever.
Okay.
And it was a great way for them to first stay in business during the shutdown, but also to test market other concepts and other menu ideas. And of course, there are businesses that are just, now getting into, like, have gotten into ghost kitchens over the last year. Like, that's all they do is virtual brands. So they're located, right? They don't have to pay prime real estate like
Mhm.
a restaurant normally would, because restaurants are retail. They're located in, like right off 95. So they have access to get to like any part of the city or South Jersey, right? They could get anywhere in like 20 minutes because they're centrally located in an industrial part of town where the rent is super cheap.
Hmm. Interesting. And so there's all kinds of varieties. So it can be all different levels of restaurants in this ghost kitchen situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ghost kitchen concept really works for takeout
Right.
concepts mostly, So like the fine dining, people were like, I'm not paying that much to eat at home.
Well, part of
Okay.
that's the experience, of course, right? I mean, part of the
Exactly.
I mean, I guess I
Exactly.
wasn't thinking the really high end. I was thinking like more kind of a variety, right? I'm almost thinking about like some of the delivery services, right? Some of the delivery services are kind of high end food, maybe
Hmm.
organic and maybe et cetera, et cetera. And other things are just a little bit more economy. They're really designed to try to get you a good meal at a relatively low price, right?
Right, right.
So
And
there's
COVID has definitely opened up we've branched out, right, as to what we consider takeout. We're no longer just
Mhm.
doing pizza and Chinese, right? Like we're ordering everything takeout. So again, another silver lining.
Wow. I know we've ordered a lot more takeout. I don't. I think I've become a lot lazier as far as like getting food and groceries and all certain things. Kind of once you learn it, right? And I think it gets back to kind of your app thing, right? If you make it easy for people to order,
Right?
once they kind of get in there, and I have noticed that some of the apps have gotten better, which
Hmm.
is interesting. So it sounds like just from a consumer perspective, I have definitely noticed the apps are getting better and like remembering what I ordered before and things like that, right? And they're a little more user friendly as far as I'm concerned, at least. So I have
Absolutely.
noticed it. So it is to me noticeable on this end. So I'm assuming there's these third party apps that they use too, right? So I'm just a one shop down the street. They go, well, I can't compete with like a national franchise, but maybe you can, right? So maybe you can get one of
Hmm.
these third
Hmm.
party ones that are really designed for the independent owners, it sounds like, right? So you can kind of look like a national franchise but still be local, right?
Yeah, it definitely broadens your reach there if you're using the other delivery platforms. But keep in mind for the consumers out there listening, if you are planning to order for pickup, or try to order directly from that restaurant. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to be cheaper. Okay.
Right.
So those third party apps are going to put a delivery fee on top of and a convenience fee and a market fee. Like they have all of these
Yeah.
fees that the restaurant can't absorb, right? So
Yeah.
it's getting passed on to you. It'll be cheaper if you can order directly from them. So
And I
that's
think that's
usually what I do.
yeah,
I'll
that's
try
a
to
that's a
order from them
great
first.
point because what I've noticed, and I noticed when we first started doing this, is my local pizza place or whatever it was. I went on to order something from them, and I always gone and picked it up. I never like had one ordered and sent to me ever before personally
Hmm.
because they're just down the street. It's like a couple minutes, right? But I started so anyway, I went on and I ordered it, and then I didn't realize it, but I asked them to do something. So I can't do that because you ordered it through this third party app, and I didn't even realize I wasn't paying that close of attention because it just pulls up all their information. So now what I do is I make sure I'm going to the actual restaurant's website first,
Hmm.
and then I go to wherever they want me to go, right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so Yeah, especially if it's a place you're ordering from a lot. Because I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was costing you money. The idea was I'm trying to give you money because I'm trying to support you during a difficult time. And I felt kind of bad. I'm like taking a couple dollars out of their pocket every time I was ordering.
Right.
So that was something I learned because they look very seamless in some cases. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, and some places, if you go directly to their website, they'll send you to that third party
Right,
because they don't have their own technology
right,
set up. And
right.
for the restaurants out there, you should get your own technology set up.
Okay. Well, we're going to take another quick break. Angie, you're listening to Master Your Finance. We'll be right back.
This is Master Your Finances with Kurt Baker, Certified Financial Planner Professional. Learn about tax efficiency, liability, owning, managing, and saving your money, and more from Kurt and his experienced panel of guests. Master Your Finances is underwritten in part by Certified Wealth Management and Investment and Rider University. Rider University offers flexible education for adult learners. For more information, it's rider.edu/nextstep.
Welcome back. You're listening to Master Your Finance. I'm Kurt Baker here with Angie Vendetti, and we've been talking about the restaurant business, and it's been very exciting in these past year and a half, 2 years. And so you mentioned early on that there's a lot of people interested in getting into the restaurant business, which having done a little tiny bit of it when I was younger, working in a franchise, it is a lot more work than I think most people realize, but it's also kind of fun. I mean, in some ways. So if you really like it, it's good, but don't think it's an easy job. So if somebody really has that passion, is connected to the business, what should be their expectation, and how would they get started?
Sure. So first of all, check out my website. It's angelavendetti.com. My restaurant startup 101 course is on there, so you can read through it, see what it includes. There's 20 downloads. There's 4 classes. I have experts come on during every class, and we cover the basics of startup. And so, first, I think it's really understanding how much it's going to cost. And in fact, if you go to my website, you'll be able to download a startup costs template. So, but the average cost to opening a restaurant is $225,000. So, and that's not to purchase the building, right? That's not anything to do with real estate. So that's just the startup cost to get the business up and running. So your equipment, your leasehold improvements, your working capital, marketing, labor, right? There are a lot of things in there, in that sheet that you can download that you maybe wouldn't have thought of, right? I work with SBA all the time to get loans approved. And, there's different underwriters all the time, right? They're always asking for different stuff. It takes a while to get through that process. So that's another thing to understand. It's like, it's going to take you 60 to 90 days to get through that process. So there's, when we approach it, we kind of come in at a feasibility, we'll do a feasibility study, right? So we do, which basically gets us halfway to a business plan. So we'll do the market research for the concept, and then we'll do the financial pro forma. So we'll put together all the startup costs, and then we'll do year 1 pro forma cash flow analysis, just to see where we are, right? And when we're doing that, we're also taking into consideration, okay, what are your personal income goals here, right? So if you thought that you were going to leave your corporate job, making 200,000+ a year to open, a 60-seat BYOB and make the same amount of money, it's probably not going to meet those goals, right? So we're going to kind of get realistic on what to expect in terms of that income. The average net profit margin is only about 7%.
Okay.
So do the math, right? We got number of seats. What's your menu? What's our average ticket, right? How many times can you turn the tables a day? How many days a week do you want to be open, right? So we'll put together sales forecasts based on all that data to try to get us to a reasonable, conservative forecast for sales. And then we'll work in all of our costs, right? So what can we afford for rent? How do you figure that out, right? Well, your concept is going to be based on, is going to determine how big your kitchen is, how much equipment you need, how many seats you really need to support that investment, right? So then we're going to look at the square footage size and start shopping. Well, where can we, realistically afford that rent, and where is our target market? So it's this kind of game of, because obviously, like, you go to where you think your target market is, and it's in a very busy part of town, and there's a lot of foot traffic, and your rent is through the roof, right? And all of a sudden, your conservative sales forecasts aren't really making you feel all that comfortable in covering that rent. So we'll look at that. We'll, one of the other things that you really need to understand is benchmarks, right? So I use a pie chart. So as a percentage of sales, where do you want all of your costs to be? And so when we're talking about rent and debt service, it's 10%. 10% of your sales. You don't want it to be any more than that. Otherwise, now you're dipping into that 7% net profit margin. So, this is kind of how we get to, where are we comfortable in terms of rent? Now, the other thing that's going to play into this equation, how much you can borrow, is how much you have, right? You've heard the old adage, it takes money to make money, right?
True.
So, how much cash do you actually have? If this is your first business, you're going to expect to contribute 15 to 20%. And it has to be cash. It can be a gift from friends and family. Can't be a loan. You're going to need a gift letter. It can be crowdsourced. Now, the only time that I've seen crowdsourcing work is when somebody already has a following. Okay. So if you can't quite afford the equity injection now to get the loan to do the concept the way that you really want to do it, scale back a little. Can you do a mobile business first, right? Can you do a ghost kitchen first and rent space inside of a commissary kitchen? Can you do pop-ups? So I have a client who was doing pop-ups for probably almost 2 years, and she gained a really good following. She was very active on social media. She collected her email addresses for her email marketing. So she was on it. She was in a perfect position to do a crowdsourcing campaign. And she raised about $15,000 from friends and family. Not enough, right? But it was a good start. Right. So, just because you've got, what you think is a great idea, even if you have a mission to it, right? People aren't as likely to want to fund your idea as they are helping somebody out of a jam, right? Or funding, supporting a nonprofit or a charity for, in memory of someone, right? These are like the successful GoFundMe campaigns that we see out there. Starting your own business, not really top of the list. So,
right.
So keep that in mind. And then the other thing is, how good is your credit? So if you're not at least a 680, start working on your credit. And it just takes a little bit of time. It takes a little bit of time, paying your bills on time. If you have accounts that are open but have zero balances, keep them open, right? Because they look at your that ratio of how much debt you have to how much credit you have, right? You're smiling because I think that you've talked about this before. Am I right?
Oh yeah, I'm very familiar with all that. Yeah, so you want the availability of credit and things like that is really key. And utilization, low utilization, high credit limits, and in general, you don't close lines unless you need to.
Right, right.
You're not to open thousands of them, but yeah, no, you're correct. That's right. That's right. They like that.
Some other things that I've seen that the banks really like. So I get a lot of married couples who want to get into the business. One of you should keep your full-time job, right? So be diversified as a couple. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. They like to see that. So with that said, you can kind of back into that number. So if you need to put in 15 to 20% cash, what can you afford in terms of the investment and the loan that you're going to apply for, and how far is that going to get you?
Yeah, exactly right. I've been doing the self-employment forever. So I mean, and these are the things that you got all great points, because when people start businesses on their own, especially couples, it's good to have a back. So you're doing backup to backup to backup. And one of the things you mentioned early on was, don't try to open up the biggest restaurant going, right? Start off with something small. I mean, I know that this may not be the case, but like food trucks used to be the way to start. Now they're actually kind of high end, some of them. But I mean, you start off with a small that you can manage, right, comfortably, and then if that goes well, you can always increase your space. You can always add on. You can always go bigger. But once you're bigger, and if it's overwhelming you, you're going to have a rough time. You're going to go out of business before you really have a chance to get going. And your clients don't really care how much rent you're paying. They just want to know, are you good food, good service, good, you got to really focus on that part of it. I mean, some of these restaurants in New York City, they're tiny, but they make a good income because they turn them over really fast, right? So no, these are valid points. You made a lot of valid points that I think sometimes people like their eyes get a little bigger than their wallets, right? Like, oh, I really want to open up this really nice thing, but they don't have the experience to do it. And even these really successful restaurateurs locally, you'll see they started off with one, and maybe they added one, and they got a little bigger the next time. But it's just very progressive, methodological. There's a method to all of this thing, one step at a time. Another thing you mentioned that I hear, and this brought up, like the people on Shark Tank talk about this a lot, is that you don't open a business for a mission, right? You open the business to make money, and then you can take care of the mission. But you have to really be highly hyper focused on, does the business model work? Having a mission is great, but you have to have the base to fund the mission, not the other way around. The mission's not going to fund it. And sometimes people get very confused about all of that, and that's not really the way the world works in business.
Yeah, in fact, so my business, Mugshots, was a certified B corporation. It was one of the founding B corporations, and we had a triple bottom line mission, and we started out with 10% renewable energy, right? And we gradually increased it, like to when we could afford it, right? We didn't start out paying benefits to our employees, and then we added a healthcare plan, right? Then we added a 401k plan. And I would encourage all restaurant owners to do that from the beginning. Work it into your pro forma, because you are competing for people right now. So you do need to be able to offer that, as part of the overall employee benefits package, to be able to get good people. And it pays back, right, in retention. Yes. It costs a lot of money to keep hiring and training people. And tangible and intangible, right? So you got your tangible cost of training and your intangible customer satisfaction.
This is Master Your Finances with Kurt Baker, Certified Financial Planner Professional. Learn about tax efficiency, liability, owning, managing, and saving your money, and more from Kurt and his experienced panel of guests. Master Your Finances is underwritten in part by Certified Wealth Management and Investment and Rider University. Rider University offers flexible education for adult learners. For more information, it's rider.edu/nextstep.
Welcome back. You're listening to Master Your Finance. I'm Kurt Baker here with Angie Vendetti, and we've been talking about restaurant business and getting started and setting up a plan and trying to do it correctly. And you had a whole big, long, comprehensive plan that you do, but you also have some information on your AngelaVendetti.com website, which gives some kind of basics. And just before the break, you touched on something which I know is big in any business, which is turnover. And I think it's especially critical in the restaurant business because training is an enormous expense. And so you want to speak to that a little bit about how do you keep your turnover low, and what are some of the methodologies that are out there to kind of help, especially nowadays?
Absolutely. So I have a package on my website, AngelaVendetti.com, it's called Staffing Solved. And basically we worked together for about 3 months, and we put together how to attract the right people. So that's part of it, right? So what's our sales pitch in how we're going to get people to want to work for us, right? And that comes down to not just what you're paying, the benefits, but culture, right? So are people really going to be happy working there? And that comes from the top, right? So that showing appreciation for people, understanding that your employees are your biggest asset, and treating them that way is huge. So sometimes it takes a little bit to get people on that train, but once they get it, it goes really smoothly, right? And then it's how do we onboard them, right? So we find the right people, attract the right people, and we want to make sure that we onboard them properly. We want to make sure they feel comfortable, that they're knowledgeable before they're ever in front of a customer. They know how to use the POS system. They know where everything is. They know who everybody is. They have a training mentor, right? And then we dig into the training program that we have, right? So I specifically, with my background, I can help with quick service customer service training, espresso training, also line cook training, right? So having tools in the kitchen to help delegate things to get done properly, having checklists for things to training checklists, side work checklists, right? Making sure you have your steps of service documented, all of these things. I like to do an orientation with my staff. This is my history. This is where I came from, right? And how I got here. No one handed me this, right? I don't have family with a lot of money who just said, here's a coffee shop, right? I worked for this. I borrowed the money. I'm paying it back, right? And, just kind of developing some level of respect there, right? That I'm working really hard. And by the way, this is my job. My job is not to cover your job, right? I don't fill in shifts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is what I coach my owners through, is that you're done filling in for people because you have to run your business. You need to focus on your business, right? But they'll respect that once they understand what it is that you actually do day to day, right?
Yeah.
So once we get through the training program, then we're going to talk about incentives, and discipline, right? So if it comes time to making sure we have a handbook, we have job descriptions, and that, we're setting expectations and they understand what the rules are. What's the lateness policy? What's the discount policy? Shift coverage policy, all of that kind of stuff, right? Setting those expectations. And then when they're not meeting those expectations, this is how we're going to deal with it. But the other thing, the big thing is incentives. Why should they stick around, right? Give them something to work toward, right? Well, when you complete this training, you're going to get a raise, right? Or at 6 months, we're going to sit down and do an evaluation. And with a good evaluation, you're eligible for a raise. For my management, right, I'm going to put in incentives to keep costs under control. So we're going to have sales goals. And then we're going to keep our cost of goods, our prime cost, our cost of goods and our labor costs under control, because they're going to be responsible for purchasing and for scheduling. So I want it to be in their best interest to make sure that they're keeping an eye on these costs. And to make sure that they're keeping an eye on these costs, we do a weekly managers meeting. So I'll work with folks for, like I said, a 3-month period to get all this stuff in place. And then we start those weekly managers meetings. And I do it with you. For a few weeks until you're, sort of ready to do it on your own.
You brought up so many good points there that I want to go back to a couple of them. One is, when you're hiring people, I think one thing that I think some people don't realize is some people are working optionally. They do it because they like the social aspect of it. So it's not necessarily about the money and everything, although most people it is. But if you create a nice environment, people want to come to work. They're going to keep coming to work because they enjoy it. They enjoy the social aspect of it, and they enjoy coming and making a difference. Another thing that I know that I've known a number of people that say, hey, I'm due for my review, and nobody has set it up or nobody will do my review. People want feedback. So I think a critical thing for managers to do is please review them. Even if everything's going well, just tell them, hey, everything's going well. Because people want to know how they're doing. And if there's little things here and there that they can do better at, they want to know all that. Somebody who's a good employee really wants to hear back from you. So I would encourage people not to put off the reviews, because sometimes they're like, I'm so busy, I don't have time to sit down with all these people and talk to them. But I think it returns in a very positive way on many levels. So sometimes employers estimate the value of these reviews, right? Because they're having their managers meetings, they're talking to each other, but they're not actually talking to the frontline people. They might get some nice feedback when they do all that. And
just to piggyback on that a little bit, I think it's really important that you show appreciation and in public, right? You want to criticize in private and praise in public, right? So do that at the staff meeting. That's what I start the staff meetings with, praise, appreciation, right? Does anybody else have anything that they want to show appreciation for, or thank somebody for?
Right.
And do it with, a gift card, right? It doesn't have to be huge, but have a few $10 gift cards ready to hand out at the staff meetings. And the other thing is scheduling those reviews. It's a lot easier. Like I would just schedule them in January and June, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just to keep it easy. So twice a year. For new folks, right? We're going to sit down at the end of the training period. The manager is going to sit down at the end of the training period, and then again at 60 days. And then it's January and June. So that kind of helps streamline it a little bit, I think.
I agree 100%. It's amazing what you can get for a $10 gift card. They just
Mm-hmm.
want to know that you appreciate them, right? My wife gives them out like candy, like for people that never get anything, just people she associates with during the year. She just
Mm-hmm.
runs around and hands out these gift cards to everybody that like does things for us. And it's amazing how nicely they treat her the rest of the year. It's just like, well, I just gave him like a $10 gift card. I just want to
Right.
thank you. Thank you for like
Right.
helping me out at the post office or whatever. I mean, just as a little something, just to say, I appreciate what you're doing for me, right? And people
Yeah.
really want to be appreciated. They really do.
Yeah. It
And
really
any
is the
little thing
thought
you
that
can do,
counts.
yeah. And they know you notice them and all that other good stuff. So what they do matters. Because sometimes if you get in these jobs, you don't like feel like anybody's noticing that you're working hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you kind of feel underappreciated. And I think when we show appreciation, people really do appreciate. And I'll throw in another thing is I know that just for everybody out there, we all should be tipping more than we ever did before because this job is a tough job right now. And we upped our tips, not that we weren't tipping badly before, but I think it's important that we appreciate the people that are coming to work. I know when we go to restaurants, I mean, we were at a restaurant just the other day that said, please be nice to the employees who decided to come to work today. I mean,
It's
literally,
true,
that's what the
right?
sign said. I go, well, when I started, like, of course we would, but I mean, they have to actually tell because it's hard to get people to come in, right? And so I think we really need to appreciate these frontline people that are coming to work and are doing a good job.
Right.
I think it's critical for
Right.
all of us to do that.
Yeah. Another big thing that doesn't cost much. It certainly does cost us something in this industry, but time off, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm going to give you a day off,
Right.
paid day off, right?
Right.
You might have to hire, pay somebody else to kind of come in and cover for them, but it's totally worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Totally worth it. That turnover cost can really be, well, it's twice the national average in the industry. The turnover
Right.
the turnover rate in the restaurant industry is twice the national average. So, and that was before COVID, right? So I think that combined with everything else, if we're attracting the right people, if we give them a reason to stay, we can really make a big impact on that number. And you can, earmark that money toward those incentives, right? The money that you would have paid for
Right.
the hiring and training of the new people, give that to the people who are sticking around.
And I'm assuming you train these people to track their turnover rates and monitor that over time to see whether it's getting better or worse, that kind of thing. Because I think the trend line is really key in that area. Because as you point out, it's such an expensive part of what they're doing that they really have to stay on top of it. Because sometimes it might get away from them. They're actually paying attention to it the way they maybe should, and maybe like survey the staff and find out, well, what's going on here.
Yep. Yeah. In fact, so with the community college, I do a class. The sixth class in the course, in the best practices course, is metrics. And so we look at employee satisfaction as a metric. And so it's important that you get, just like customer reviews, right? It's kind of a numbers game. Like you want to get as many reviews as you can. You don't just want people who are complaining to be giving you reviews, right?
Right.
You want to make sure that you're getting, not just doing exit interviews, right? For people who are on the way out, but getting regular feedback. And so doing that anonymously at staff meetings is a really good way to do that. And you look for themes, right? If you see a few people say the same thing over and over again, like you want to dig deeper. If you have one outlier who's just obviously completely disenfranchised, you want to have the opportunity to deal with that immediately. And usually you know who that is.
Right.
And I'll tell you what, there's never been a time where I've had to let somebody go where I didn't say I should have done that sooner, right?
Mm.
Every time I've had to fire somebody, it's like, why didn't I do that sooner?
You hear that
right?
a lot.
You always feel like you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do without that person, right? It's so people dependent, this business. But if you have somebody that is truly disenfranchised, it's going to spread. And you want to make sure, like, either you get them on the bus or get them off, right?
Exactly. Yeah. One bad employee can bring down 10 good ones. So you got to be careful about that. Any final thoughts? I mean, this was amazing. A lot going on here. So any final thoughts?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about the turnover costs. The other thing that I help my operators do is track their cost of goods. And if you're not doing that on a weekly basis, you absolutely should. And especially right now with beef prices through the roof, it was chicken wings, and it was pork. You couldn't get paper there. It's all over the place. So make sure you're keeping an eye on those costs, that you can see the red flags when they happen, and have the time to deal with it before you start losing money.
Well, Angie, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. Very interesting. You've been listening to Master Your Finances. You can subscribe to this podcast and listen to all our podcasts at masteryourfinances.us. Remember, together we can master your finances. You can enjoy financial peace of mind.
That was this week's episode of Master Your Finances with Kurt Baker, Certified Financial Planner Professional. Tune in every Sunday at 9 a.m. to expand your knowledge in building and managing your wealth. Missed an episode? No worries. You can subscribe to a free weekly episode of Master Your Finances to listen to on your favorite podcasting platform. Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, whatever. Master Your Finances is underwritten in part by Certified Wealth Management and Investment and Rider University. Rider offers continuing studies programs for adults who need flexibility. Want to add new skills to your resume? Take a continuing studies course at Rider University.